On a summer Sunday in 1908, London witnessed the biggest political gathering Britain had ever seen. An estimated 250,000 people, some said 500,000, marched on Parliament. It was so noisy that when the speakers stood up to speak, most of the crowd couldn't even hear them. They had come for one word: vote. For over a century, we've known of that history only through faded photographs and old engravings. But now, using advanced AI reconstruction techniques, we can turn those still images into living, breathing scenes and walk through Hyde Park on the 21st of June, 1908, as if we were there. Stay with us until the end, because this story is captivating. 30 special trains racing towards London, a colour code that became world famous, a bugle call heard by 500,000 people, and a Prime Minister who shrugged it all off with consequences nobody saw coming. This is the story of the Suffragette March on Parliament. Let's go back to Britain at the start of the 20th century. Women can work in factories. They can take part in battle. They can raise families, run businesses, teach, nurse, write books. But when election day comes, they stay home. By law, no woman in Britain can vote for her Member of Parliament. The men who make the laws are chosen entirely by other men. For decades, women have asked politely. They've signed petitions, written letters, held meetings. Parliament listens, nods, and does nothing. Then, in 1903, in a small house in Manchester, a widow named Emmeline Pankhurst decides polite isn't working. With her daughters, she founds the Women's Social and Political Union, the WSPU. Their motto is 3 words long: deeds, not words. The newspapers give them a nickname meant as an insult: Suffragettes. The women take the name and wear it with pride. In 1905, 2 of them, Christabel Pankhurst and a mill worker named Annie Kenney, stand up at a political meeting and ask a simple question: will the government give votes to women? They are thrown out, arrested, and offered a choice: pay a fine or go to prison. They choose prison, and that comes to public attention. And suddenly, the whole country started to talk about them. Now we arrive at 1908, and everything comes to a point. In April, Britain gets a new Prime Minister, Herbert Henry Asquith. And for the suffragettes, this is bad news, because Asquith opposes votes for women, but he leaves a door open. Prove it, he says, in effect. Prove that ordinary women, not just a noisy few, actually want the vote. The WSPU takes that as a challenge. Fine, they say. You want numbers? We'll show you numbers London has never seen. The organiser is Emmeline Pankhurst Lawrence, the union's treasurer, and she plans this like a military operation. 30 special trains are chartered to carry supporters from around 70 towns across Britain. Stewards will meet them at the railway stations and guide them through London. 7 separate processions will approach Hyde Park from 7 directions, each with its own marshals, captains, and banner bearers. And then she does something no political movement has done before. She gives the campaign its own colours: purple for dignity, white for purity, green for hope. The idea is simple and brilliant. Every woman is asked to wear a white dress with touches of purple and green. London shops spot a business opportunity and fill their windows with white frocks and coloured ribbons. In the 2 days before the march, more than 10,000 scarves in the colours are sold. Even the men wear ties in purple, white and green. 700 embroidered banners are stitched by hand. One of them carries a message aimed squarely at the men of Parliament. Not chivalry, but justice. Sunday, the 21st of June, 1908. The sun is out. From Euston Road, Emmeline Pankhurst herself leads a procession dressed in purple. Beside her walks Elizabeth Wolstenholme-Elmy, in her 70s now, silver-haired, campaigning for this since before most of the marchers were born. From Paddington comes Annie Kenney with women from Wales, the Midlands and the West. From the Victoria Embankment, Christabel Pankhurst and Emmeline Pankhurst Lawrence. 5,000 more march up from Kensington with 5 brass bands. Around 30,000 women are marching. Mill workers next to duchesses, teachers, nurses, seamstresses, students. And along the pavements, Hundreds of thousands of Londoners press in to watch them pass. Among the crowd, a photographer named Christina Broom is capturing it all. Images you can still see today in the London Museum, and we've brought back to life in this video. Inside Hyde Park, 20 platforms stand in a huge circle, and from them, 80 speakers address the crowd. Famous faces are the writers George Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, and Thomas Hardy. But here's the astonishing part. The crowd is simply massive. The Times estimates somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000 people. Most of them can't get anywhere near a platform. They can see the speakers' mouths moving and hear nothing but the roar of the crowd itself. At 5 o'clock, a bugle sounds across the park. From all 20 platforms at once, a resolution is passed calling on the government to give women the vote without delay. Then the entire park is asked to shout 3 times, one great cry. Votes for women, votes for women, votes for women. 500,000 voices. The papers run out of superlatives. The Daily Chronicle writes, "Never has so vast a throng gathered in London to witness a parade of political forces." Surely now the government has its proof. The resolution is delivered to the Prime Minister, and Asquith's reply, when it comes, amounts to this. He has nothing to add to what he's already said. Sit with that for a moment. The largest demonstration in British history, the trains, the banners, the months of work, the perfect, peaceful, orderly day, and the answer is a shrug. For many of the women, this is the moment something snaps. If 500,000 people in one park changes nothing, what will? 9 days later, 2 suffragettes, Mary Lee and Edith New, throw stones through the windows of 10 Downing Street. It's the first time the movement deliberately breaks anything, and it marks a turning point. Then, in October, the WSPU prints a handbill inviting the public to rush the House of Commons. On the 13th of October, some 60,000 people crowd into Parliament Square and find 5,000 police officers waiting. There are scuffles, dozens of arrests, but the crowd never breaks through. Emmeline Pankhurst, Christabel and their colleague Flora Drummond are arrested for inciting the rush. At their trial, Christabel, trained in law but barred from practicing because she's a woman, calls 2 government ministers to the witness box and cross-examines them herself. It didn't save her. The women are sent to prison. Standing in that courtroom, Emmeline Pankhurst tells the judge, "We are here, not because we are lawbreakers. We are here in our efforts to become lawmakers. The years that follow are hard, and it would be wrong to soften them. Suffragettes go to prison in their hundreds. Many go on hunger strike, and the government responds by force-feeding them, a brutal procedure that leaves lasting damage. The struggle drags on, with escalation on both sides, until the First World War changes everything. In 1918, women over 30 who meet a property requirement finally win the vote. 10 years later, in 1928, women gain it on equal terms with men. Emmeline Pankhurst dies in June of that year, just weeks before the final law is passed. She never cast the vote she spent her life fighting for. One June day in 1908, 500,000 people filled a London park and asked to be heard. The government looked away, but the country never forgot what it saw. And within a generation, the thing they marched for became so ordinary that today we barely think about it at all. If you enjoyed watching history brought back to life, hit like so more people can find the channel and subscribe. Because there are so many more days like this one waiting to be retold. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the past.